right, well, looks like it is 7 o'clock, everyone. I'm just trying to check to see how many people are in here. Looks like we've got 5 tonight. And just to kind of recap, I'll start in a couple minutes. Remember, tonight is review only. And so I got the study guides out there, the exam's already ready. So whenever you want to take the test this week, it's out there. Tonight, I'll just kind of take a few questions to see where you want to take tonight's class. It's really about letting me know what issues you're having, whether it's, debits and credits, whether it's the basic accounting equation, anything I can work out with you tonight. I do have a couple of problems in Connect. I can show you, I can work through whatever it is to help you. And then another thing, again, before we get started, I think somebody had asked, I believe it was this class, I can't remember if it was my other class, they had asked about a practice exam, and I didn't have a practice exam, but I went ahead and what I did this afternoon is for your class only, I have now put some extra practice questions in Connect. If you want to do them, it's all optional. It's just practice. It doesn't count towards a grade. And in a minute, I'm going to show you my page. I'll show you where those are. And you might even, if you even want me to pull up a couple of these test type of problems, I can do that if anybody wants me to. But I did put the practice problems out there. So if you wanted to practice those, you can. You get unlimited attempts. Doesn't count towards a grade. They're up there really for the rest of the semester. So if you want those, again, it's optional if you think that might help you, do it first, and then once you've done that and you're comfortable, then take the test. But just to kind of recap, remember the exam is due by this coming Sunday, which is October 4th. Today, I guess, is the 28th of September. So you got 7 more days or 6 more days to get it, to get it attempted. Again, my policy is you can take it at your time. You do have 2 hours to take it. Just don't wait until 10 o'clock Sunday night, or don't, take it before 10 o'clock Sunday night, or you won't get that full 2 hours. All right. Having said that, again, tonight, I'll take questions. Any particular chapter that anybody wants me to go back and look at. If it's from chapter 3, I'll pull up my chapter 3 problem. If it's from chapter 2, just the basics of the accounting equation, I'll pull up another really good problem about that. If you have questions about the financial statements, let me know. I have another problem I can pull up and we can talk about that. But it's really all about, I want it to be more student driven tonight. You guys let me know what you need help with. And tonight's a review night. Regarding our time tonight, it really kind of depends on what questions you do have for me. If there's not a lot of questions, we may not necessarily go the full 2.5 hours tonight. It really just kind of depends on what type of things you need help with. So just kind of giving that as a heads up. So it might be a short night, it might be a long night, it really depends. I do this with my Monday, Wednesday hybrid class. And, there was a few questions this morning, but by all means, probably after about a half an hour into the class, I didn't get a lot of new questions. And so they wanted to go back and look at stuff. And so again, they meet again on a Wednesday. And so we'll just kind of wait and see what kind of stuff they have for me on Wednesday. But again, you've got me tonight. Let me know. Again, I don't have everybody muted right now, but I'll just kind of wait a moment and just kind of sit back, and whoever wants to ask a question, any topic, any place you might want me to go back and look at, just let me know, and I'll start with that. So having said that, anybody? Yeah, question?
So on the quiz, there was one question in particular that I know I kept getting wrong, and it was just because how it was worded, it was so weird to me. And it was like, how does the net income, the balance statement, and the statement of owner's equity connect with each other?
Was it on chapter 3 quiz?
Yes.
Hold on, let me just pull it up on my end. Let me check it out.
Yeah, I had a tough time with this quiz too. I feel like some things were worded really strange.
I did as well. I got all of the practical problems right and none of the theorem.
Check it right now.
Oh, okay. So it says, I think, Chris, I found the question where it says the 3 financial statements are linked together because, and then again, I can pull it up. Hold on just a second. Let me pull up this question. All right. And I think, again, this is just on my end of it. So of course you guys can see you can see the correct answer now, but where it says net income from the income statement is used on the statement of equity, and the ending balance of the capital account computed on the statement of ownership is used on the balance sheet. They're just in a way trying to say this is, your net income transfers to equity, and then your equity gets transferred to the balance sheet. That's, in a way, that's basically what they're trying to tell you in this particular problem. And I don't know if it worded kind of strange. I'm just kind of looking at the other answers. Well, first of all, like, let's just say this was a test question, for example. You could eliminate option number 4 right away, because if you look at a problem like this, and when it says net income from the balance sheet, you can stop right there because net income is not on the balance sheet. Net income is on the income statement. So if you were to see something like that on a test, and this was a question, you could eliminate this option as one of the correct answers. So then you would just be looking at options 1, 2, or 3. Now, when I look at option number 2, and it says net income that is computed on the statement of owner's equity, again, you can stop right there because that's a false statement. Net income is not computed on the statement of equity. It's computed, again, on the income statement. So again, Chris, that's a real good question. The way they word these test questions, sometimes they try to put distractors, they try to throw wrong words into the sentence. And on this one, it looks like the author of this particular question, they wrote a sentence and then they just kind of interchanged it by saying equity, balance sheet, and that's what would make option number 2 and option number 4 incorrect. And so then you would really be down to a 50-50 guess between the first radio button and the third one. And if you look at the third one where it says net income from the income statement is used on the statement of equity, and the ending balance of the capital account computed on the balance sheet is used. Again, if you compare option this one and this one, the only wording that's different, if you compare them, it looks like right there. It says computed on the statement of equity. This one says computed on the balance sheet is used on the statement of equity. So they're trying to trick you a little bit by making it really kind of wordy. But if you compare these two options, hopefully you can see how option number 1, once you thought about it, would have been the best option. But it does bring up a point, is that when you do take these tests, whether it's a quiz or the upcoming exam, and let's say you get a problem like this and you get confused with it, sometimes just look at the way they word some of the answers, and then use some of your knowledge by saying, for example, on this one, like I just said, you don't compute net income on the equity statement, and net income is not computed on the balance sheet. So it could not be these two. It could only be either option A or option C. So not to say that this is a great question. I'm just saying sometimes if you just kind of use a little bit of logic, a little bit of knowledge that you've got, sometimes you can eliminate, some of the responses, and that might help your test score. Okay.
I got a question about the exam.
Yes.
I couldn't find it today when I looked for it.
All right. So if I pull this up, hold on, let me get back to my screen here.
Oh, thank you.
Hold on just a second. Yeah, thanks. All right. So this is section 452. And let me erase my drawing. And again, this is my view, but under your view, I've got exam 1s right here, chapters 1, 2, 3. The dates are September 28th through October 4th. And then if I pulled up the student view, and again, sometimes it doesn't click my mouse over right away. Now, if I look at the student view, again, this is if I logged in as a student, I can see right here, at least on my end of it, Daniel, I can see that exam 1 is showing up right here where it says start September 28th, which is today. So it's basically been out there for since 12 o'clock this morning, and then says due October 4th. So if you log in to Connect, you should see it show up just after the chapter 3 quiz.
Okay.
And did you not see that?
No, I was looking for it, and I went to that quiz section, but I didn't get all the way down to. I got down to the number 3 quiz, I believe, but I didn't go below that because I did the exercise with the chapter 3 quiz.
Okay, no problem. And also let me share one more thing. If you go into Blackboard, so let me show the Blackboard page. And if you go to Connect Assignments, again, this is in Blackboard. When you log into Blackboard, that's the other place you should be able to see your assignments. And so if I go there, hopefully you can see this. You can see that exam 1 is also showing up as a link in the Connect page on the Blackboard side as well. So you could also access the exam by clicking this link once you log into Blackboard. Okay. So
Okay.
again, let me know if you don't see that.
So during the semester, are we going to cover all 12 chapters?
Nope, we will not.
I was
There-
thinking 8. I don't know.
Yeah, well, what happens is there's a lot of, these textbooks aren't custom. They just put 13, 15, sometimes 20 chapters into a textbook. And so we're going to cover all the relevant information that pertains to this, the essentials of accounting. We are not going to get into payroll. There's a few things we won't get into, but we're going to cover, like, for example, if you just need the basics of accounting for any degree program, that's what we're going to cover. And if for some of you that go into financial accounting, this pretty much is the good prereq for that. But it's gotten to the point where there's so much information in accounting, you literally, you cannot cover everything in a given semester. So we try to say quality over quantity. And so the first 6 chapters of this book cover the essentials of all accounting. And then everything after chapter 6 literally repeats itself. We just kind of get into more in depth on some specific concepts.
Got another.
Okay, and were we supposed to be doing the smart book video or not? Is that
Those are
4th grade?
Yeah, those are optional, Tanisha. Yeah, those are optional.
I've got a question in reference to the chapter 3.
Okay, hold on, Daniel. Hold on. Let me mute everybody first of all, and then Daniel. Hold on. Once I do that, Daniel, can you come back now? And ask a question. You should be able to unmute yourself, Daniel, now, because there's some background noise, and I don't want people to get anxious because they can't hear. But back to Daniel, you had a question about the chapter, something in chapter 3. Did I lose you? Okay, well, I can come back to Daniel later. Does anybody else have any questions before I put up anything else? Let me check my chat,
Yeah.
see if there's anything in chat.
Can we go over the bulk of the chapter 3 quiz? Because I could do the homework where you plug the numbers in, but I don't have anything in my notes about anything about balance sheets or equity sheets or what transfers to where. I got like 3 right. And
Okay.
I don't know what, I don't know why.
Okay. You want me to just to bring up was there any particular, you should be able to look at your chapter 3 quiz results.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know that I could do that. No, I got like 4 right.
Yeah.
So
you go-
like all of them, pretty much. I got all of them wrong, pretty much.
Okay. So if you go into Connect, and I'll bring mine up in a minute, and this is for everybody, you should be able to review your quiz results after the due date. So the due date was yesterday. So as long as you submitted it, you should be able to go into Connect Gradebook and not only look at your score, but also look at the feedback in terms of which questions you missed. Okay. But I can do a couple things if you want. Hold on just a second. Oh, there's a question. I'll get back just a minute. Let me do that. Let me pull up. I'll just pull up my version of it so you can actually see the correct answers. And then let me share it with everybody. and I can stop on any of the questions you want me to, but you said particularly it was about the financial statements. Was this Lauren? I forget who was asking that question. I think was that
Yeah,
Lauren?
it's Lauren.
Okay, so this was, let me find a question that relates to the financial statements. We talked about that one already. Yeah, well, based on this one, it looks like, and again, I couldn't remember all the questions I put on. The one that does pertain exactly to the financial statements is question number 6, which I just talked about. But was there a particular one? It looks like to me, most of these questions pertain to the debit and credit, what gets debited and what gets credited. Question 3 was just a normal balance type of question.
I definitely struggled with question number 10.
I can pull that up, but I just go before I get that. But Lauren, you said you said specifically it was about.
Yeah, somehow I missed the things with the credits and stuff too, and I really don't I clearly just don't have a good understanding of it, regardless of what's in my notes.
Okay. I could bring up if you want tonight, I can also bring up some of my practice questions. You have. Let me show you one more thing, and I'll come back to this. If I go back, and this is for everybody. Hopefully you can see at the bottom, I added these. It's at the very bottom when you log into Connect. It should say Exam 1 practice questions. There's like 50 of them. I think there's 50. And then you've got some more practice problems. The practice problems is what I can kind of show. If you want me to with anybody, I can pull those up tonight. But with this one where it says Exam 1 practice questions, these are true, false, and multiple choice test questions that you can go in there and practice as many times as you want. There's no grade. And so for Lauren, for example, if you went in there, and let me just kind of open this up for a quick moment. Again, I don't want to just give all the answers because some people may want to just work it, but if you open that up, if I can get this open, and again, there's 50 questions, and I'll show you something. If I look at like from chapter 3, there's a ton of questions from chapter 3. And for example, I'll just pull up one of them right here. So here's a question. It's just a true false question where it says the normal balance of a liability account is on the debit side. Of course, it's true false. False. But that would just be, I got several practice questions out there to help you practice some of these debit and credit, the way they word some of these test questions. So I went in there and added that. So again, these are similar to what was on your quiz, from chapter 3. So hopefully you can go in there and you can open this up as many times as you want and maybe take some notes on that if it helps. But I can come back to some of these later and, pull up a couple problems and maybe analyze a couple of them if that helps. Okay.
The screen that you had now, as you get into this this page, go back and explain that to me in terms of with the Connect. The screen that has your picture on it.
Are you talking about Blackboard or Connect?
I'm talking about Connect, as you get into Connect to get into the exams.
Okay, hold on, let me go back. Let me get out of this. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, that page there.
Okay, yes.
And you pull the exam down from where now?
Well, let me get to your view because that's how I see it. So the way you would see it is like this. You would, when you log in, because this shows me this is the student view. So if you log in, you would see something like this, and you should see exam right there.
Okay, under the quiz in chapter 3.
Yeah, it's listed right after the chapter 3 quiz. The only reason you see these red tags that say late, it's because the due date has passed. So notice with the exam, it's got the current dates of September 28th through October 4th.
Okay, and when I went to I think it might have been the homework in chapter 3. I couldn't get the distinction between the trial balance and the chart of accounts in terms of what makes those two up and make them different.
Okay, let me do this. So let me go back to the instructor view. And let me pull up a problem. And this is just my practice problems. And in this, I've got 3 problems. And the third one deals specifically with the 3 financial statements. You've got the income statement, the equity statement, and the balance sheet. And then, of course, they throw in this thing called the balance sheet. So with your question about the chart
trial
of accounts,
balance, the trial balance they throw in.
right, but the chart of accounts, all that means is that's just a list of all the accounts that a business uses. That's what they call the chart of accounts. And in this particular problem, all the different account names that are on this trial balance, whether it's cash, accounts receivable, office equipment, furniture, and so forth, all of these accounts would make up a business's chart of accounts. Okay, so that's all chart of accounts means. A trial balance, what that represents is, that is just taking each individual account and looking up the balance of that account. So for example, cash, and again, they're showing you the T account down below right here. So if this is cash, after they posted all of their transactions with the debits and the credits, they came up with a debit balance, which is $117,280. That balance would then show on the debit column on the trial balance, okay? And then what you do is for all of your other accounts, you would get a balance, whether it's a debit balance or a credit balance, and then you'd put it into what's called the trial balance. And that's what this example right here is showing you, is they're showing you that once you list all the debit balances and all the credit balances, that they should be equal. And that's all that the trial balance does. It just says debits equal credits.
Okay, I'm getting an understanding that with the asset accounts, you talk about the cash, the accounts receivable, the supplies, and other
Go ahead.
the other items in the asset accounts, and then you go to the liability accounts and the owner equity accounts. I'm trying to get the distinction between what makes up their trial balance.
Okay, so for example, and just take this problem right here. This is just a problem that says you had transactions A through S. And so what they did was they went through these transactions and they would have entered the appropriate debit or the credit. So for example, like on part A, where it said Sutton invested $141,000 in cash to start the business. So you've got cash, which is an asset. And of course, an investment is an investment activity, and we always put that into capital. So if we did our debits and credits, we would be increasing cash or debiting cash, and then we'd be crediting capital. And so what they would have done then is they would have gone down to their T account, cash, there's that debit of 141, and then there's the capital, there's the credit, okay? So coming back to your question then is, once you've gone through every single one of these transactions, you would have picked the appropriate account, whether it's an asset account, a liability account, an equity account, or whatever. Once you've got all the debits and credits, this right here, what this page is showing you, this is showing you all the different accounts that they would have used to record the debits and credits. Now, when it comes to classifying cash, you should know that that's an asset. Accounts receivable is an asset. Office equipment is an asset, and so forth. That's part of when you're doing your debit and credit analysis. Even at that point, you need to be analyzing and picking what type of an account it is at that point. But once you've done all that, again, that's all this represents. Again, coming back to the trial balance, the trial balance puts all of the accounts on there. It doesn't matter if it's an asset or an expense account. It just says what accounts did a business use, and these are all the accounts that they use for this month, and then they put the account balance. Now, if you want to classifying them into a financial statement, that's what the balance sheet does. The balance sheet says, what are my assets? And you got to list your assets in that area. What's my liabilities, which again is accounts payable. That's going to be your only liability, at least up to the first 6 chapters. And then there's your capital. So it's the balance sheet. It's the one financial statement that really acts just like the accounting equation. It's just a detailed accounting equation. The trial balance, it's similar, but the trial balance, all it does, it's not a financial statement. It just proves that debits equal credits.
Okay, that's after you do all of the T accounts here.
That's what your T accounts. After you've done all your T accounts and got your balances, the trial balance just says what's your debits and what's your credits, and they should be equal. That's all it does.
Now, are you putting those in order in terms of the assets?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Does not matter.
Nope.
Okay.
They always start with cash, but if you wanted to start on the top and put miscellaneous expense, to me, it does not matter.
Okay, that covers all the accounts that you're using in that month segment.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay,
I ended
yes.
up getting it right, but it took me a really long time. Like it took me about 2 hours to do chapter 3 homework.
Okay.
So on question number 10.
And by the way, Jay, that's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Okay.
Because remember, the time that's involved in this class, I don't expect anybody to get the homework done in like 10 minutes.
Oh, I remember. And it always takes me like an hour to get the homework done just because I'm trying to figure it out and
No, that's good. No,
everything, which is the
that's
point,
good.
but it
That's
just
learning. That's learning.
So question number 10, letter G, just
Where are we at again? So what problem, what question?
question number 10 for chapter 3 homework.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull it up real quick.
Go ahead.
Let me go back. So it's chapter 3 homework. Question number 10.
Yes.
You get it. All right. And what part of that?
Letter G.
Letter G. Okay.
That threw me off for the longest time.
Okay, let's take a look. And can everybody see that right now? Jay, I got it saved?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it says purchased a computer and copier for $18,000, paid $7,200 in cash immediately with the balance due in 30 days. So just the essentials, like if we were to break that particular problem down, and again, let me get see if I can get my stylus working here. All right. So again, I would start by saying, first of all, we've got assets equals liabilities plus equity. And we know that your computer and copier would represent equipment. So that would be in the asset section. I know that's one of them.
Yep.
We've got cash affected. That's another asset. So I got 2 assets affected here. And then when they say the balance is due in 30 days, that's going to be accounts payable. That's going to be a liability.
Ability, yeah.
So if I broke this thing down, I'd say, okay, what would be and before I would get to the debits and credits, I would start by saying what's increasing and what's decreasing. So in this problem, you'd say your equipment's increasing, your cash is decreasing.
Cash is decreasing.
Right. And then
your accounts payable are increasing.
Okay, so there you go. You increased equipment by 18,000. You decreased cash by 7,200. And then remember, if you netted these together, at this point, you would get how much? Was it 10,800? That's an increase on the asset side. And your equation has to balance, right? So therefore, your accounts payable must have gone up by 10,008. Now, from a debit and credit perspective, you'd be saying that you are debiting equipment for 18,000 because it's increasing. You would be crediting cash by 7,200 because it's decreasing. And then your liability, since it's also increasing, you would credit it as well. So if you're talking from a debit and a credit standpoint, it would look like this. You would have $18,000 of debit. And then, of course, you would have 7,200 of credits with your cash plus 10,800 credits with your liability. And these two together would also add up to 18,000.
It just really threw me. Like I ended up getting it correct after so long of figuring it out. But it was the first question that we've had that involved 3 different accounts being affected.
Yeah. And by the way, part K on this does the same thing. Letter K does the same thing.
But when I got to G, it was the first time.
Right.
Once we got to K, I was fine, but it was just the first time that it had acted like that.
All right. So Jay, let me ask you a question then. So if you saw that on the exam, would you be okay with it?
Now that I've worked on it, absolutely. It was
Okay.
just, it threw me off, absolutely.
So that's part of the learning process. I mean, like I said, when I'm not trying to make everybody be a CPA, but guys, when I studied for the CPA exam, I would practice questions and I'd miss a lot of questions, and it was frustrating. And when I miss a question, I'd mark it, I'd make a note card, I'd come back, I'd look up the solution, and I'd kind of say, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? And I'd learn from it. And then I got to the point where when I would learn from my mistakes, I would never make that mistake again. I start to see some patterns, and then they might have got me on the first try, but the next time they wouldn't get me because I learned from it. And the point is that's how you learn this stuff. It's practice, and it's good to not get something right. It happens to everybody. I don't know of anybody that gets everything in accounting correct, just because you don't always see the logic right away. And that's why it really takes time. You got to spend a lot of time in this stuff, practicing it, reading it to really absorb it, for it to all of a sudden, okay, I'm getting it now. All right. But like I said, it's a different language for a lot of people. And the way you learn it, you got to spend more time in it. So, if it took you 3 hours, or take anybody a couple hours to work these problems, or one problem, that's normal. That's actually what should be happening, because the idea is once you practice this, you start to take notes, you learn from it, and then when you're on an exam, you'll see something similar, and then hopefully you'll be able to critically think and get it right. Okay. But that's if you're thinking, man, I don't like that, that's the nature of this class, and that's the nature of accounting. Okay.
I have another question about the charter, the chart of accounts.
Okay.
When they talk about all of the accounts that the business uses in its actual, I guess, activity.
Go ahead.
And I'm seeing, the finance, the income statement, the statement of owner's equity, and the balance sheet. Those are the accounts that I see.
Hold on. Those are your financial statements, Daniel. You just listed the financial statements.
Okay, those are the financial statements.
Right.
And how do they plug into your chart of accounts?
Hold on, let me go back. And again, I just want to pull up a problem that I'm going to go back to that problem I've got. It's simply, and again, these are the answers, and let me just show it, go back. So if I can get this open. All right, there we go. So in this particular problem, this just take a look at, this is your income statement right here. Okay. On your income statement, the only thing that goes on your income statement is your revenues and your expenses. That's it.
Okay.
And these would be part of your chart of accounts. So for this particular company, their revenue account they're using is called fees income. Their expenses, for this problem, they had 5 expenses. They have rent expense, utilities, salaries, telephone, miscellaneous. Those are just part of your chart of accounts. But specifically, your income statement summarizes your revenues and your expenses, okay? Your equity statement is your beginning capital balance. It transfers over that net income. I think somebody asked earlier about the relationship between or among these three. Your net income gets added to the equity. And then here's your withdrawals. If there's any personal withdrawals, get deducted. And of course, in chapter 3, we would be calling that account called drawing. And then you get this ending balance of capital. Again, this is part of your chart of accounts. And then on your balance sheet, that just lists all the other accounts that they would have used from their chart of accounts. So in this case, they have 4 assets, they have accounts payable and capital. That's all they're using on this particular. So your balance sheet is simply summarizing your accounting equations, your assets, liabilities, and equity. Now, Daniel, make a note. Your revenues and your expenses are not shown directly on the balance sheet. they're shown on the income statement. But because they get transferred to the equity statement, and your equity statement is really your capital, guys, this is for everybody, your income, your revenues and your expenses indirectly get put on the balance sheet by affecting this account called capital, okay? So this capital account would reflect if a company had net income and withdrawals. But all of these accounts is just part of what they call the chart of accounts. That's just a list of account names. If you went and worked for, let's say you went and worked for Boeing and you got a job in their accounting department. Well, you can imagine a company like Boeing, which is like a $80 billion a year in revenue type of company. It's huge. You know, they're going to have more than 4 asset accounts. In fact, a company like Boeing probably has thousands of accounts, okay? And every account would have some sort of code, some, you know, account coding, because that's for the computers. But you would never know at that company every single account code for their chart of accounts. Nobody would know that off that. You'd probably be familiar with some of them, but you know, the companies I worked at, I knew a lot of the accounts, but I didn't have them all memorized just because I didn't work with them all. But at least I understood the concept, which is more of what you're asking. And the concept just means the chart of accounts is just a listing of account names that a company uses. And every company can use different types of names, different types of codes. I guarantee you every company probably has something called cash and accounts receivable. But when you get to stuff like equipment and furniture and that stuff, every company can customize their software packages, and they may have a specific code called computer equipment or office equipment or something else. They might have 20 different accounts called equipment that relate to a specific type of equipment. Okay, so don't get too overwhelmed with this concept of chart of accounts. That's just all the accounts that you'll be using. And on the exam, you'll know the accounts. They will give you the accounts on the problems. You don't have to make those up. You just have to know how to apply it. Okay?
Okay.
Good questions. Anything else? Let me check. Somebody had a question that they typed in. All right, keep going, guys. Let me know. Anything else particular you'd like me to talk about or look at?
Okay, just to review. So the information from the trial balance gets dropped on the income statement, and then the income statement information goes on to the statement of owner's equity, and then that goes to the balance sheet. That's the order that things get plugged in.
Very good. Yeah, so trial balance is not a financial statement. It just proves debits and credits. Think of your income statement as financial statement number 1. And so if I were to label this, I'd say this is financial statement number 1. You've got your revenues and your expenses. That's only 2 types of accounts are on this one, all right? And if your revenues are greater than your expenses, which they are in this case, you got 56,000 of revenues and you got 15,970 of expenses, you would subtract out the expenses and you say net income is 40,730. So then that number would go to your second financial statement. Let me erase that. There's your net income. You have to subtract out your withdrawals. And these 2 numbers right there would be netted against any beginning capital balance. And then notice in this case, they got the 40,730 net income. They subtracted out the withdrawals. That's a net increase of 33,730 that gets added to that beginning capital balance to get this ending capital balance. Once you do that, again, you've transferred income to equity, and then you've accounted for the withdrawals if there are any. Once you get this balance then goes to the balance sheet. So then again, the third one, again, which we'll call your balance sheet, is just that. Here's your capital balance. Again, let me get my arrow back up. Here's the balance that's coming from your equity. And then everything else, you're literally just pulling from your T accounts. You get all your asset accounts, get the balances, again, really from the trial balance. There's your accounts payable. That's a 1 liability. All you have to worry about up to this point is just the 1 liability account. And then at the end, you should be in balance. Okay. So on the exam, if you're asked to prepare the 3 financial statements, then you'll get something similar to this. And then you'll just have to click the right drop-down arrows, enter the amounts from the balances, and do that transfer. Do the 3. Do the income, do the equity, and then do the balance sheet.
In chapter 4, they talk about something like work up the worksheet in that cycle.
So Daniel, we're not going to talk about chapter 4 tonight, since we're not starting chapter 4 till next week.
Okay.
So I don't want to confuse anybody else. I mean, if you want to talk outside of class, I can do that.
Okay.
Just for tonight's class, I'm only dealing with chapters 1, 2, and 3, because that's what this week is about, just the exam. I mean, if you're ahead of me, that's fine, but I'm not going to deal with any, just for this class tonight, it's just about chapters 1, 2, and 3. But we will deal with anything with chapter 4 next week.
Okay.
Is revenue and fees income synonymous?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody hear this. So if for this exam, this is if you see fees income and they want you to prepare an income statement, that'll be the account name they want you to use. Okay. Just call it fees income. And then of course, I think the expenses are pretty obvious. If it says the word expense, I think you guys will get that one. But the fees income, that's the only revenue account. In fact, that's the only revenue account we will be using up through chapter 6. Okay. And the only liability account, at least up for the next couple of chapters, at least for this exam, is accounts payable. I believe there may be a new one in chapter 5, but for this point, just accounts payable is the only liability account you need to worry about on this particular exam.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
I was doing part of the. I want to talk more about the SEC, the FASB, and and the gap.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of questions on like if you did the not the homework, but the little questions they gave you when you were watching the video. It's like 40 some questions.
Okay.
And I always ended up getting it wrong with those. So I want to talk about that.
Okay. So a couple things on that. Because there's a lot of stuff in chapter 1, like on Sarbanes-Oxley. I don't think I brought that up. Sarbanes-Oxley. You guys don't have to know too much about that one. That one, there's a lot of detailed stuff that really I don't think is really necessary that you know everything about Sarbanes-Oxley, other than the fact that it's basically a fraud law. It's a law that helps. The idea is to help prevent fraud. But if you're talking about the Securities and Exchange Commission, the basic idea behind that is that's just the governing body of accounting. In fact, if I'll just kind of leave this screen up, I've got this. This is on this practice problem, but the basic hierarchy goes like this. You've got the SEC, and so they would be at the top. And of course, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's the government body. They're a pretty powerful group of people. Below them you would have what is called the Fasbi Group, and the Fasbi stands for Financial Accounting Standards Board. And I believe it's 6 individuals that are appointed. And these individuals, FASB is responsible for writing GAAP. They write all the rules, generally accepted accounting principles. And so, yeah, they work closely with the SEC, even though the SEC is basically, they approve all this stuff. The FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, they're the group that is responsible for actually writing law. And when I say GAAP, this is all law. This is all legal stuff written by our Congress. They have to pass this stuff through. Now, don't ask me in terms of if it comes up before the House or the Senate. I'm not quite sure the process there. I know that the FASB group introduces all this stuff, and at some point in time, it becomes law. Just like you have your tax laws get passed. Your FASB laws would go through these processes as well. But the FASB group is the group that writes all the laws that pertain to all these publicly traded companies. And so anytime you see, for example, like you have insider trading, everybody probably remembers Martha Stewart. Also, she's the billionaire home and garden lady, you know, a few years ago. She got caught for what they call insider trading. And what happened was she knew about information before it went public with her stock. And apparently, I think it was some sort of drug company. She owned some stock in a major drug company. And she got information that a particular drug invention or something was not going to be approved by the FDA. And so literally maybe it's the day before the announcement went public, she dumped a bunch of stock. She sold a bunch of her stock because she knew that the stock price was going to go down. And the SEC, coming back to what the SEC does, the SEC caught it and they red flagged it and they investigated it and they found out that she indeed got the information before it went public and ended up, I believe she actually went to jail. I mean, it didn't matter. But my point is the SEC it's a huge group. That's the oversight body. That's the top group for the accounting function. So you got the SEC. They basically they're the boss, but Fasbi would be underneath them. Anything they do has to be approved again by the SEC. And as long as you understand that basic concept, you'll be okay for this exam, because I'm not going to test you on how many members are in Fasbi or what year. I'm one of these instructors. I'm not big on you have to know the year. I think that's ridiculous. That's just a history lesson. I'm more about applying, and you got to have some knowledge, but the fact that if some of you did know that Sarbanes-Oxley came out in 2002, that doesn't mean you know much about accounting. That just means that you saw something out. That's when the law came out. And of course, it's a living document. It keeps changing. But I typically don't ask for dates on the test. I avoid dates. But I do believe you should know this relationship. You should know that the SEC oversees all of accounting. The Fasbi Group is the group that writes GAAP. And of course, everybody should know what GAAP stands for, which again is Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. And that essentially is what we're studying in this class is GAAP. And it's basically all the different types of rules that companies follow. So for example, tonight, several of you had asked about the financial statements. Well, that's part of the GAAP. Part of GAAP rules say you got income statement, then you do equity statement, and then you do balance sheet. But there's a lot more to GAAP than just the financial statements. But we got the debits and credits and the accounting equation, and all that is under this thing called GAAP, just so you know. Okay. But I think Diane, you'd asked that question. You don't need to know every single, I mean, it's pretty thorough. If you go through all your notes on that, they do a lot of good job of talking about a lot of the background of the stuff. But I'm more interested in testing just some of your basic knowledge of knowing just some of what these bodies are, just the basic stuff. The majority of the exam will come from applying the stuff in chapters 2 and chapter 3. So I'm not going to say that there's nothing from chapter 1. There's some questions from chapter 1, but a good portion of this exam comes from chapters 2 and 3. I don't know, does that help you a little bit? I think, was it Diane that asked? I think it was somebody that asked.
Yeah.
So if I were you, I would go over some of that, but I would spend.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. I would suggest spending more time with chapters 2 and 3, but still maybe spending a little bit of time on chapter 1, reviewing some of those basic things from my PowerPoint. Go back to my PowerPoint video, and looking at some of the things I talked about. So I touch on some of this stuff, but I don't expect everybody to go back and study all the different rules about Sarbanes-Oxley. And you may need to know, like, for example, something about the different business entities, sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation. I would know some of the characteristics about those. I would know that stuff. But yeah, you don't have to go back and study all the different details about the Sarbanes-Oxley requires an audit rotation every 7 years and stuff like that. I'm not going to test you on that.
Okay.
So good question. And to me, that's the benefit of tonight is, you guys can ask me questions, and there's certain things that I will tell you and certain things I won't, but I think that's a fair question. I would spend more time studying stuff in chapters 2 and 3 because that's going to make up a bulk of this exam.
I just had a question about the exam itself, sort of like what it will look like. Um, like, so on our homework and stuff and on the practice exam, we have like the option to like check our answers and like work through it. Is
Mhm.
that an option on the
Nope.
exam
Yeah.
itself?
The way the exam is, it's you get one attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then once you've attempted the exam, you will be able to see your score, but that's it until after the due date.
Right.
So once the due date has passed, what I do next week is, I think the due date's Sunday. So next week, whether it's Monday or Tuesday, I'll go in and take a look at everybody's scores and review what everybody got right and what they missed. And sometimes I even make an adjustment to your exam score. If, for example, let's say that you got a few points taken off on a problem that I felt like you actually showed more than what they thought you did, I can then go in there and make some adjustments to your individual exam score. And that's the stuff I'll look at next week.
Okay.
But there is no save later option. You simply go in just like if you're taking a quiz, but the difference is you only get one try to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is let's say there's, 40 questions on this test and there's 2 problems. Let's say you're on question number 23 and you're feeling pretty good and your time looks really, really good. And all of a sudden your internet goes out and you're kicked out and you can't get back in. The system times you out and you think, oh no, it's over because you were able to complete half the exam. Just email me and I can reset the exam and I can work with any individual. I can look at which questions you haven't answered yet and reset it so that you don't have to worry about those questions that you haven't answered, and I'll still give you the same time. So that, just in case there's a technology problem and that does happen, just email me and I'll work with anybody on that.
I got a question in reference to the email. I tried to email you today and it wasn't set up that I could get through to you because I was having problems trying to find the exam.
I don't know. I had an email issue earlier too. I couldn't get an Outlook. I got kicked out of Outlet this afternoon and I finally got back in. So it could be, there might have been an issue with Outlook. I don't know, Daniel.
Okay.
I checked my emails. I don't think I've got, if you sent me an email, I didn't get it.
No, I could not get into the Outlook.
Yeah, that could just be an Outlook issue. And I'm just telling you, I had an issue today too. So I don't know if anybody else did, but it was earlier today. And what I did was I just kind of logged out, and then after about a half an hour, I came back and I was able to get back in. So that, Daniel, that was probably just an Outlook issue. That's the only thing I could think of. So.
Also about the exam.
Okay.
So like, again, with like the check answers thing. So when we're doing our homework, there's an option just to see if like what you have so far is entered correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So like you don't leave the homework itself, but you can check the answers status, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Will the exam have that as well?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not going to know. It's not going to tell you right then. You won't know until you've submitted the exam. Once you've submitted the exam, then you'll know your score.
Okay, that's fine.
That's just how it. I mean, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, I actually think that would be kind of cruel because let's say that's happening, and all of a sudden you answer the first 3 questions wrong. That might then hurt your confidence, and then you might just quit and not try to the rest of it. So in a way, I don't think you want that. And
right, that's fair.
It's just like, not to reference back to this, it's just like the CPA exam. When I answer a question, if it's a multiple choice and I see one of the answers that looks like what I think is the correct answer, and I pick that answer, I'm feeling pretty good. And so I keep going to the next question. But if I knew as I go I'm missing a bunch of questions, I'm gonna be so focused on what I just missed that I may not be able to even finish the test.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm gonna be thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail anyway. Why bother? So I think it's good not to know until the end, because that way you just give your best effort, answer as best you can, and then whatever happens. And then of course I always look at everybody's results after the exam, and then if there were bad questions, I throw them out. I've always done that since I started teaching.
I've got a question.
And sometimes there are bad questions.
Right.
And when I say bad questions, if I've got 50 people taking a test and it's literally the same test, and all 50 missed the same question over and over, and I look at it, And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad question, but sometimes if I go back and look at a question that's missed repeatedly, and I study it, and maybe I may think, yeah, maybe that was a bad question. What I tend to do is I just throw that out and I curve it and I add points back. And so I do stuff like that.
I gotcha. I was just worried because I know in the past, some of us have struggled with not realizing that we missed entering something or something like that within, like, when you're looking at like balance sheets and stuff.
That's a good.
That's what I was just worried
Tori,
about.
that's a good question. I mean, that's why I'm here tonight, is because I want everybody to ask these questions, because you should know your expectations. You should know what to expect when you go to take this exam. And being that is the first exam typically everybody's probably the most nervous. But after the first exam, all the exams are the same. You'll have multiple choice and a couple problems. Once you've gone through the first round, you'll pretty much know how the second exam works as well. But at least going into this first exam, definitely, I want to know what's my point value. I want to know how many questions are on there. I want to know the time, because that helps you as a student plan the test. Now, having said that, I've taken so many tests in my lifetime. I had situations where literally the professor wouldn't tell us. Basically, it'd be like, exam is next week over first six chapters, whatever. And that's all they would tell us. They wouldn't tell us if it's multiple choice, if it's a word problem or whatever. They give you the concepts, and then you'd walk in and you just take the test. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I see what they were testing you to see your ability to critically think. But in some cases, I always disagreed with that, because look, if I'm taking a multiple choice exam versus an essay exam, I'm going to study differently.
Right.
And so I had a situation in grad school where, and he is a professor I really respected and I really like him. He's retired now. He's really good. But he did that kind of stuff to us. He would literally, he'd mix it up. I had a test once where we didn't know what to expect. We had a little study guide. We showed up and the exam was all vocabulary. We had to define all of these accounting terms. And most people might think, well, that's easy. Well, if you didn't study for that type of an exam, it's very, very difficult. So then on his next exam, we were all thinking, okay, what's he going to do to us now? But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, yeah, he could go by definitions again, which is very difficult. He went a different route, but we didn't know what to expect. Every time he did something different. And I don't know if it was just how he was trying to test his theory was you either know it or you don't know. And I can respect that. But when you talk about accounting, there's so much volume of information. It really helps you hone in on how to study. And I would argue that if I'm taking an essay type of exam, I'm going to study differently than if I'm taking a multiple choice type of an exam. It's a different type of an exam. Doesn't mean either one's any easy or difficult. It does help you in terms of study, I believe.
Yeah,
but
of course.
The other thing is the fact that you guys get 2 hours on this test. It's open book, open note. So what I would suggest everybody do is to write up a couple pages of handwritten notes with examples. Like I think somebody asked tonight about the financial statements. I would print a couple financial statements and make some notes on them by saying income statements number 1, equity statements number 2, and so forth. And then maybe write some notes on that. And maybe go back and rewrite some equation, write all your debit and credit rules out, make some notes, and then kind of use that as kind of like your cheat sheet and see if that doesn't help. Because I've often found that these type of exams, if you try to look up an answer, you're not going to find it, because most of the questions on this particular exam, you have to apply the concept. It's not an exam where it'll say, okay, what's the accounting equation? Okay, and everybody knows the accounting equation, assets equals liabilities plus equity. So you won't get a question like that, but you'll get a question where it'll be like, if you bought equipment on credit, how would that impact the accounting equation? Stuff like that. So you'd have to apply it. So that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter if it's open book or not. If you don't know how to apply it, then you can't answer it, okay? But hopefully, through all the practice you've been doing, that you will be able to answer that. And that's my hope when you guys go to take this exam. Okay. All right, anything else? Questions?
I've got a question in
Can
reference
we?
to
Oh,
if you get down to like do 6, 7, and 8, and you realize you want to go back to 7, can you do that in that quiz, in that exam?
I believe what happens on this test is I think once you've answered a question, I don't believe it lets you go back. I think they bring up a situation where it says you've answered it and then you move on. I mean, that's a good question, but I don't believe you can backtrack. I don't believe. So I think once you got that question answered, I think you go to the next question. Now, Daniel, when you take your quizzes, does it let you do it? Does it let you go back?
I've never had to go back in terms of the quizzes.
yes, you can go back in the quizzes.
Yeah. I believe on this, like, for example, hold on just a second. Actually, to go back and answer, let me do something. Let me go back. So let me pull up these practice questions. And if I go from a student viewpoint, and I'll just pull up a couple of these, and you guys, again, there's like 50 of these. So, you know, you guys can go and practice these anytime this week before you take the test. But so let's say you went to the first question. It says the purpose of accounting is to provide financial information about a business. Let's say I select true. And then, of course, on this one, it's going to say score answer. But if I'm looking at what they want me to do here, if I just say, okay, I think at the top, if I click submit, it says you have 49 incomplete questions. Visit the, so I'll put cancel. I think you just click score answer. It said you can't change your answer if you score now. This cannot be undone. So I believe you'll get that same thing when you go to take the test. Once you submit that answer, it'll be like that. But the difference is it's not going to tell you if you got it right or not. I've got it set so you'll just go to the next question. So like on this one, the way it's set up, again, next question, it's in the sole proprietorship. The owner is not responsible for the debts of the business of the companies, and they will pay. Of course, that would be false. And of course, here I put score answer, and I put score, and of course, we get it right. But clearly, like you can see, it's just going to go back. But in this case, I didn't set up the controls on this one where that you would see your scores. Okay, so on this one, I believe that once you answer it, I think you just have to keep going with it.
Okay.
And so, by the way, I don't want to give away the answer to these questions, but I'm sure some of you could probably get these right. But here's another one. Currently, generally accepted accounting principles are developed by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. So if you saw that, of course, this is true or false. And I think I just said this earlier tonight. Does anybody remember who develops GAAP?
That's fast.
The Fasbi.
Yeah. So of course, because this is just true or false, but of course we know that this would be false, right? Because the AICPA, they do not write GAAP, but you know what? The AICPA writes the CPA exam. They don't write GAAP. So of course, in this one, you'd say false. And of course, I hit score answer, of course, you'd say, of course, that would be correct. But this would be a good, you know, these are just practice questions. You guys can go through any of these and answer them and see how you do. And on this one, you can print them. Notice that you got a print function. If you want to print all these questions out, if you want to, you can print them and take notes on them. If you come across a question that you don't like. Again, I came up with there's a lot of true false, and I pulled a couple algorithmic type of multiple choice. You guys can go in and work if you'd like. So let me return to the instructor view on this one. And so notice it's 50 questions. And of course, I can preview this thing, but I don't want to just bring up all the questions, but if I just randomly pick a couple questions, let's say here's a question. And I don't like that one, what I'm trying to show you guys. Hold on. These are just true false. So, for example, this could be an example of a test question where you'll be like, okay, they want you to fill in the blank, but then choose the best answer. So for example, it says when equipment is purchased for cash, it says the cash account is credited and something else has to be debited. Of course, it'd be equipment, but you'd have to choose the right account that would be debited. So just as I'm pulling this question up, you could get exam questions just like this, where you're analyzing debits and credits, where they just want you to select the account that gets debited or the account that gets credited. And likewise, if I go back to some of the earlier questions, again, I'll just randomly pick one or pick a couple. I want to show you guys So here's one. So for example, it says if the following are the only accounts of this Jones Supply Company, it says, what is the missing supplies balance? So you'll notice this is really an accounting equation question. They give you cash, which is an asset, supplies is an asset, accounts payable is liability, and of course capital is equity. So to be able to figure out supply, and of course to me the answer is not important. I mean, we know it's 4580, but to me it's how do you get the answer? And so my point is, just by me showing you this, your process, if let's say you got a question like this, what you'd want to do, at least what I would do, is I would go to my equation and I would say, okay, you got assets equals liabilities plus equity. And I simply just plug in these numbers. I've got 9,200 of cash, okay? And of course, it's got accounts payable of 4,000, and you've got equity of 9,780, all right? And of course, if you add up these numbers right here, everything on the right side of the equation, that would be what, 13,780. And right now I've got 9,200 on the left side. So clearly the answer would be the difference between 13,780 minus the 9,200. And of course, that would be the 4,580. So my point in just showing you this type of problem is going back to what I said earlier, you can all look up what the accounting equation is, but if you don't know how to apply it, you might have a hard time figuring out what that missing element is, if that makes any sense. Okay, so again, I'm just trying to walk, this is just one problem of 50 I've given you. This is stuff you should practice so you get, when you get to the actual exam, I would also have scrap paper ready so that when you get to the test, you can write stuff down and then plug it in and answer it. Now you cannot print, I've said that you cannot print any of the questions because it is an exam, but you definitely can try to take some notes and you can jot stuff down as you go and try to answer the questions. Obviously, have some scrap paper with you at all times. But that would be my process of how I would answer that type of a question. And you'll get stuff like that. And that's just one of them. I mean, here's another one. So if you go to the next one, check this one out. So in this particular problem, it gives you some information. It says at the end of the first month of operations, this delivery service, the business had the following accounts. So I guess, Daniel, this kind of comes back to, don't worry about the chart of accounts. They're going to give you all the accounts. You just have to know how to classify them. So if they give you accounts receivable, prepaid insurance, equipment, cash, and then it said they have the following creditors. You've got 17.7 for this company and 15.2 of this. The question says the total assets for this delivery service are, well, of course, there's the answer, but you just have to add up all the assets. You have to know what the asset accounts are. So again, for example, accounts receivable is an asset, prepaid, equipment, and cash. And they're showing you this right here. By adding all these together, they'd come up with that 61,160. So you have to know a little bit about what these represent in order to answer this particular question. Now, I know this is the answer, and of course, it's always easy when I'm showing you guys the answer right here. But another thing you should make a note, and of course, you guys don't see this part when you take a test, they've rated this question as a hard question. And I'm like, how is this question hard? Is because they give you liabilities of 17.7 and equipment of 15.2. And I think they're just saying this is hard because they're throwing these out there as distractors. You don't have to do anything with the liability accounts in this problem. So you might want to say, well, why did they even ask it? Well, because you should know that you don't need it because those are not assets. If this problem has said, what's the liabilities? Then you'd add the two liability accounts. If this problem had asked, what's the capital balance? Then what you would have to do then, at least what I would do, is, again, I would write out the equation. Let's say assets equals liabilities with equity. I'd plug in the assets, I'd plug in the liabilities, and of course, the one unknown would be that equity. So you'd have to, the assets are 61,160, and you've got liabilities of 17.7 plus 15.2, add those together. So then, of course, you'd have to subtract to get that equity balance. But of course, they didn't ask it. So a question like this, they could ask 3 or 4 different types of questions just based on this data. Okay, so you guys have this problem. I mean, again, this is under practice problems in your Connect. Everybody, if you want to go in there and practice these this week, you know, before you take the exam, do it, and hopefully that'll build some confidence, you know, going into this test. These are very similar. Some of these questions are very similar to the kind of stuff you're going to get on the test. Okay. All right, now I know I'm getting to about 8:10, and so what I can do is, if you want, because I always like to break the class up, if you guys want to take a quick 10-minute break and then come back, and then if there's any particular problem you want me to put up, or problems, other concepts, let me know. I'll be glad to work out anything. If you want me to just to go back through a problem, just doing some accounting equation analysis, I can do that. Just have to let me know, okay? So it's about 8:11, and it's good to take a break. If you take a restroom break, get something to eat. Why don't we do this? Why don't we pause it for about 10 minutes? Come back. If you still need some help, that's fine. It'll be about 8:21. If you feel like you're pretty confident right now that you're good to go, and you just got to do some studying and some work, that's fine too. And you know, if you need to leave, that's fine. Again, anything I talk about tonight is being recorded. So again, I'll post everything up on Blackboard tonight, so you'll be able to watch this video again. You can fast forward it because it'll be through a YouTube link. But let's just do it. So let's pause for 10 minutes, come back, and let's see what else you guys want me to do, if it's just working specific problems or whatever. But think about what you think you might want me to talk about during the second half of the class tonight.
I've got a question before you go.
Okay.
Those exam practice questions, where are you finding those?
The questions that I just brought up.
Yeah.
Okay, so if
They're
you
at the bottom.
Yeah.
At your assignments, if you go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, so I'm in the student view right now. So Daniel, when you log into Connect, and again, you can only get these through Connect. I did not deploy these to Blackboard. You have to go directly into Connect.
Okay.
And they should be below the Chapter 13 quizzes. That's where they're located.
Oh, below. Okay, Chapter 13 quiz. Okay.
So anybody can spend as much time on any of these 2 problems they want all week. Just make sure you just do it before maybe do this as a practice run up to the exam. And then just, of course, make sure you get your exam submitted by Sunday.
Okay.
Right. All right, so let me take a 10-minute break, and anybody who wants to stay on the second half, that's fine. I'll work anything you want. If for those that are feeling pretty good and think I got this, and you want to head out and just start preparing and studying and maybe work these practice problems on your own, that's fine. You can always email me later if you got specific questions. I mean, 50 questions, I can't go through every one of them tonight, obviously, but you know, think about what you need after 10 minutes break. And if you feel pretty good right now, you can feel free to leave. But again, I'm here to help anybody, anything that help you get ready for this test this week. All right, so now it's 8:30, so let's say 8:23. I'll pause it until 8:23, and then we'll come back and we'll see if anybody needs any extra help.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I've got 8:23. Okay, still got 10 people in here. So anybody want to get started? Anything that I talked about earlier tonight? Anything new? Any chapter, any concept, anything you'd like me to explore tonight? Anybody let me know.
I'm sorry.
Is that Philip?
Sorry. What? Hang on a second.
Take your time.
No, just And, sorry,
Philip, I cannot hear you. Did you have a question?
not really. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Anybody else? Again, just whoever wants to ask. Whoever has anything else
In
specifically.
this practice exam, how many questions are available there?
On the practice, I've got two different things. Let me pull this up. Again, let me make sure everybody can see this. Okay. So again, this is my view, but again, what you should have is there's actually two different practice type of questions. I've got one that says exam 1 practice questions, chapters 1 through 3. Those are all true, false, and multiple choice.
Okay.
The one that says exam 1 practice problems, that's where you've got accounting equation, you've got the T account debit and credit problem, and a financial statement problem. So those are kind of like similar to the types of problems you'll get on the test. All right, so one part is just is objective, and then the other part is where you actually kind of have to enter the debit or the credit, or you'll have to enter like the amount into the problem. Okay.
Okay.
So I've got those set as, actually you could say there's actually two different practice types of tests out there for you right now.
All right, I got you.
And remember, whoever tries those do not count against anybody. So those are just practice. So if you've submitted and let's say you get 50% correct, so what? You know, that's just practice. It's not going to hurt your grade.
Okay. I get to that through Connect.
Correct. You have to, the only way to get to that is Connect. The reason I did that was because if I deployed that in the Blackboard when I could have, the problem would be it would show up in the Blackboard grade book, and I don't want anybody to think that's going to count towards your grade. So the only way you can get, the way I would suggest you guys do this, let me change my screen share, is remember you got two places in a couple places. So you cannot go to the Connect assignment link. What I would do is I would go to the Connect website directly, enter your student email and your password that way, and then that's how you'll be able to get to those practice test questions. Again, okay. You cannot get them through this link. In fact, just to show you that, since I got it pulled up, if I click on the Connect assignments, you'll notice that nothing shows up. It's just your graded assignments. Okay, so these practice questions, you can only get to those through Connect directly.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Questions. I guess we can say this is our second half, again, second hour. So was there anything else, anything you'd like me to go back over, practice, review, anything?
Can we go over some questions from chapter 2? I don't have anything specific. I know I had a hard time with chapter 2, and it's not because I didn't understand the material. I had a bunch of stuff to do, and I really couldn't focus on it the way that I know I could have.
Okay. Did you want me to bring up an account? Chapter 2 is all about the accounting equation. Did you want me to bring up one of those practice problems and just go through a few of the transactions? Would that help?
Yes, that'll work.
So let me do that.
Thank you.
And just for the time, I'm just going to bring up, this is practice problem number 1. Okay. Now, on this particular problem, again, make sure everybody can see this. I'm just double checking. I hate for me to start talking and then half the students can't see what I'm saying. So it should say exam 1 practice problems. In this particular problem, again, chapter 2 is all about the accounting equation. And of course, you have to know how to classify accounts. And so on this particular problem, they give us, it looks like this is your list of accounts, so your chart of accounts that you'd use. And then they give you 10 different, transactions they'd want you to analyze. Now down below, you've got the accounting equation that they've already set up for you. And again, at this point, don't worry about any of the numbers here. I mean, yeah, this is all the correct answers. Don't worry about what they've got in here. Just follow the basic idea. You've got cash, accounts receivable, office furniture, and auto. So one of the first things that we did in chapter 2 was to talk about what are the different types of asset accounts. And what are assets? Assets, again, are items that you own. They're benefits to the company. And these are just your typical types of assets. That would go in that part of the equation. Notice you've got an equals. And on the right side of the equals, you've got your liabilities, which is accounts payable. And in fact, that's the only liability account you have to worry about on this exam. Then notice under equity, you've got capital, revenue, and expenses. Now, the one item they left out on this problem was drawing. There's 4 actual types of equity accounts. You've got, again, capital, revenue, expenses, and drawing. They just didn't have the drawing on this particular problem. But another thing about chapter 2 is you should know that the equation always has to balance. This is the fundamental equation. Notice that expenses have a minus in front of it because expenses reduce equity. So everything that we really did in chapter 2 that pertains to this equation, can be kind of looked at in terms of these 10 types of transactions. So for example, first of all, in this type of problem, they give you these starting balances. So all these numbers right here, you have to enter as what they call a beginning balance before you do any of the new transactions. So if you see that this, where it says cash 59.7, they just pulled that from the very beginning balance to start the problem. Where it says accounts receivable 15.3, they just went ahead and entered that as what they call the beginning balance. So they took all of these numbers and they put those in this top row called beginning balance. And so once you got to that part, then you can start to do your analysis, which really at that point, that's kind of what we did all in chapter 2. So if we look at the first few of these, and I'll go through a few of these and then I'll pause, and if anybody has any questions, I'll go back over. The first one says perform services for 67.10 on credit. So at this point, hopefully everybody knows perform services means revenue, and on credit, in this case, would mean accounts receivable. So we've got an asset and we've got a revenue item. So again, let me get my stylus on. So before I would do all this, I would kind of break this down. I'd say, okay, you've got your assets equals your liabilities plus equity. So again, you'd identify that one of your asset accounts would be accounts receivable, and then the other one's going to be, in this case, our revenue item. So remember, the equation has to balance. So then once you do that, then we say, okay, well, you've got credit, accounts receivable is going to be increasing, and revenue is also going to be increasing. Accounts receivable will be increasing by 67.10, and revenue would also be increasing by 67.10. So once you would do that, then they just want you to put that into the equation down below. So as you can see, again, let me get my arrow back. So they've got, there's the 67.10 there, increasing your accounts receivable. And then there's the 67.10 increasing your revenue. So essentially, they're just, in this whole chapter is just practicing plugging numbers into your increasing to your assets or your increasing revenue. So they're having you plug into this equation and then trying to make sure, again, that it balances. So then the next one says paid $17.30 in cash for new office chairs. Now, not to make fun of the people who write these type of problems, because, again, the assumption here is that you're essentially, everything you pay for is with cash, right? I mean, or money. I mean, they didn't even have to say the word cash, but they're doing it. So they could have just said paid $17.30 for a new office chair. So I think it's kind of like implied when you pay for something, you are either using your credit card or you're writing a check. I mean, I think that's implied. But sometimes they go above and beyond that and they get pretty wordy. And so it says you paid $17.30, of course, in cash for new office chairs. So cash is an asset and office chairs is an asset. And of course, based in this problem, they want you to use office furniture. So you've got two assets. One asset's going to be increasing and another asset's going to be decreasing. So of course, when you pay cash, cash should be decreasing. So they're going to put that as a minus right there. There's that minus $17.30. And then they're going to show an increase to office furniture of $17.30. So there's an increase and a decrease. And of course, your equation, still balances. So essentially, that's what we've been doing really in chapters 2 and 3 is of course, debits and credits is chapter 3. But the whole premise is really about this, accounting equation, right? If I look at the third one, transaction number 3, where it says received $11.5 in cash from credit clients. So you'd identify cash as an asset. We know cash is an asset. And then you'd be thinking, is cash increasing or decreasing? Of course, you would say increase. And then the other fact is what's credit client mean? That means you're collecting from your accounts receivable. And so you'd be reducing your accounts receivable. So notice in transaction 3, which is right here, they're increasing cash by $11.5, and then they're decreasing accounts receivable by $11.5. Okay. So again, all we're doing, this is what, the third one? So again, in chapter 2, it's really all about how to read a transaction. You got to classify the accounts that are used. Are they asset accounts, liabilities, or equity? And then you're simply saying what's increasing, what's decreasing, and then you're plugging it into the equation, okay? And again, not to do the whole problem, but of course, what you do then is, let's say you got through down to number 10. And of course, some of these repeat. Notice you've got performed services is number 1, number 8 is performed services, and number 10 is performed services. So there's a lot of repeat transactions on here. But the idea would be, is once you went through every transaction, the equation, you would add up all the numbers for every account. And then of course, you would prove that all of your assets should equal all your liabilities and your equity. Okay. So just to kind of do a brief summary, that's the essence of what we're doing in chapter 2. So if you practice this, and so when it comes down to like exam questions, so let's go back to that type of question. So for example, on this one, on number 1, where it said perform services for $67.10 on credit, if I don't ask this for you to do this in a problem like this, I could ask in a multiple choice question, how would this transaction affect the accounting equation? And of course, you would say, well, revenues would increase and assets would increase. And the way you'd want to do that is maybe write out the equation on maybe a scrap paper and maybe go through this process before you actually would answer the question. Okay. So performed services, we know again is revenue. On credit means accounts receivable. And again, you can get questions asked in a multiple choice format. They may not look like this question specifically, but the problem would use transaction examples just like this, and you would have to identify the parts of the equation that in fact are impacted. Does that kind of help a little bit in terms of at least what you need to be able to do
Yes.
for chapter 2?
So I was getting confused about the owner's equity. I don't know why. I think I kind of spaced, but now I get it, and I got my notes here. So I think that's good.
Yeah. What I would do is, and I think you can even print this one. I think you can. So you guys might even want to print. You might want to go through and print this thing, or even take some notes on this problem, and then just kind of use that as some of your practice. Now, if I go back And again, I don't want to, I forget which question I brought up, but just like on your practice questions, again, this is the ones you guys can work out. Again, there's a lot of true false questions on there. All right, so here's an example of what I just said. So this is, it doesn't matter. I mean, you guys go back and if you remember the answer, try to block it out and then maybe work this later on. But here's an accounting equation question. Here's what they give you. Okay, so they tell you, it says, if during the year total assets increased by 67,000 and total liabilities decreased by 12, by how much did owner's equity either increase or decrease? So notice this is an accounting equation question, but they don't give you the equation. So if you're working this, what you might want to do is maybe take a scrap paper. I'd write out the equation like this. There's your equation. And I just basically rewrite the question, but I would put it in my equation. So I would say assets are 67,000, that's a plus, equals. Now keep in mind this would be plus because they said what, increase. They then said liabilities are what? Decreasing by 12. Again, this is what's happening on the right side of the equation. And the answer said, what would be your equity? Well, just remember that if your assets, remember this is on the left side of the equation, if your assets increase by 67,000 on the left side, remember that means that on the right side of the equation, you have to have something to offset that by also 67,000. So in this problem, the only way to get an increase on the left and an increase on the right is you're going to have to add these two together. So to get the plug number for equity, notice the answer would be what? 79,000. All they did was they just took 67 plus 12, and therefore equity must have gone up by 79,000 because 79,000 minus 12,000 would give you 67,000. Okay, so that's just one example of how you would have to apply the accounting equation on the exam. Okay, again, and that is specifically from chapter 2. All right, I had a question on permanent versus temporary accounts. All right, so here's the deal on this. And let me bring up another problem. So let me get out of this page. So let me just show you guys, because some of you had a question about permanent, temporary, and permanent accounts. So let me show you something. All right, so this is one of the practice problems. And I'm just going to go right to the financial statements. Let me see if I can illustrate what they mean by that. Okay. All right, so again, let me write this out on this so that way, if you want to come back and review it, it might help. But the concept of what they call a temporary account versus a permanent account. So jot this down. A temporary account is any account that's on the income statement plus the drawing account. So just by pure definition, I'll explain why in a minute. To remember what the this is called in accounting, they call temporary accounts versus permanent. A temporary account is essentially your revenues, expenses, and drawing. That's it. Your permanent accounts is anything on the balance sheet, which is assets, liabilities, and of course your capital, your equity. Okay, so if you just remember, if it's on the balance sheet, it's what they call a permanent account. So explain the rationale behind this, guys. A temporary account is simply used each period, that eventually every period you're going to start over, you're going to reset it, and your temporary accounts are basically used to update that equity. So remember, your temporary accounts, which are revenue, expenses, and your drawing, of course, those again, all your temporary accounts, those accounts, what happens is typically most businesses prepare financial statements monthly, every month. And so what the accountants will do is every month they will go in and they're going to reset all of their temporary accounts to zero. And then every month they have new revenues and new expenses and new drawings. So they start over every month. And that's really about all you need to know at this point is just know the very basics in terms of what they are. We don't really deal with what they call the closing process in Chapter 6. What we're gonna do in Chapter 6 is we're gonna take these temporary accounts and I will show you how a business resets those. But for now, just to know the distinction between what's temporary and what's permanent. Permanent accounts are your balance sheet accounts, which is your assets, liabilities, and equity. And your temporary accounts are what they call your revenues, expenses, and your drawing. And at least for that exam, that's really all you need to know at this point. Because for me to kind of go in and show you exactly the process in terms of how you close stuff out, that's really what we're going to be doing in Chapter 6 anyway. Okay.
Now your drawings come out of your owner equity accounts.
It reduces, yes, drawing reduces equity, it does, but just the pure definition of what's a temporary account. Temporary account is revenues, expenses, and drawing. That's it. There's 3 of them. Everything else is what they call a permanent account. And your permanent accounts are what is on the balance sheet. And so at this stage, since we're only in Chapter 3, for me to fully explore and really show you how we deal with these temporary accounts, I don't want to go into that depth yet because you don't really, we can't do everything in Chapter 3. But the preview, what's coming up is we're going to take these temporary accounts and we'll show you how a business resets those to zero every period. And it's just internal stuff. They reset them and then they reuse the same account over and over again. It's really just about tracking. They have in accounting what they call a periodicity assumption, where you have different time periods. Every month you look at a financial statement. So you have to have some sort of mechanism in accounting to be organized. And so what typically most accounting departments do is they have, and some of you may have heard of this and maybe just in real life, is most companies have what's called an accounting close period. And so every month the company is going to close out the books. And typically what they mean by that is typically you zero out all your temporary accounts and you transfer everything into capital. And then you do an evaluation of your financial statements. And then now that you're into the new period, you start over from zero and then you start accumulating more revenues, more expenses, more drawings, and then you reset them again. So it's what they call the accounting close. But we're not really at that point yet. And personally, I actually feel it's a little premature for the book to even mention that until you deal with it in Chapter 6. But they do anyway. I mean, it's out there. Like I said, I didn't write the book, but I don't even feel it. I feel like we shouldn't really even be talking about temporary or permanent really until Chapter 6, because that's when we're really going to use it. At this point, I don't really think it's relevant to really know about that because I think it's just going to confuse some people. But since you guys asked, that's what it is. So when we get to Chapter 6, we will definitely be studying what's temporary and what's permanent, and we'll show you exactly how you reset the books. But at this point, and you can kind of read into in terms of how I'm going to test you, the likelihood that I'm going to ask anything about temporary versus permanent on the exam, it's probably a pretty low probability. And that's just, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't know it, but I just feel like at this stage of the game, since we're not really doing anything with it just yet, I don't see the relevance until we actually do it in Chapter 6. That's just my opinion. All righty, questions. So again, I forget who to ask that question, but I hope that's satisfactory for now in terms of just distinguishing between the two in terms of just pure definition.
Okay.
All right, questions. Anything else as we keep going? I know we got some time. Does anybody feel better about the preparation this week before?
Yeah,
they take the exam?
I do.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Does anybody feel worse? I hope not. I mean, has anybody tried the tutoring service just yet?
I'm doing the tutoring tomorrow for the first time.
Let me know. And you could just send me an email. And I won't bring up anybody's name or anything, but I'd like, give me some feedback. Whoever uses the tutoring service, let me know if you think it's helpful.
Okay.
And of
No
course, to all extent, I may not actually know until after you take the test. I can see if it was helpful, but I'd like to know. The tutoring service, I believe, is through the Merrimack campus, but it's all virtual. I think you can actually go on campus to Merrimack.
You can go on campus.
But I think you have to make an appointment before you go. I don't know.
No, you can walk in.
Can you?
You can walk in.
Yeah, that's better than most places, because most places I go to now, if you don't have an appointment, they won't let you in. I had to go to the bank the other day, and everything is drive-through, which is fine with me. But I tried to go in because I wanted to ask them a question. Of course, there's a security guard there, and then they kind of came out and they said, "Oh, this is appointment only." Okay, no problem. You have to go through the drive-through, and I get it. But yeah, I didn't know. I'm not the one running that lab. So, but the information that was sent to me, they didn't describe it as being anything in person, but I think that's just kind of like, maybe they're not broadcasting it just because, with this COVID thing going on, they don't want a lot of people coming over just in terms of, the risk. Not, again, I don't know if it's high risk or not in terms of, the way this virus is spreading. If they say if you're indoors, it's in the air. So I don't know. But I think the first option, I think what they want you to do is to try the virtual option. And then if that's not working, there are times, I believe, when you can go in. But yeah, I think just set an appointment, try it out, and, let me know if you feel like it's good. Because, if it's not good, I can talk to my chair and say, hey, look, maybe we can, how could we improve it if it's not? But again, I don't know yet, since they just now gave me the link, because they didn't have our textbook information until like a week ago. So, all right. Anything else, guys? Anything else you want me to go over tonight that I haven't covered? I'm trying to think of anything else just off the top of my head. I know in my mind, I think I've covered everything that I'm testing you on tonight. It's just a matter of how are you feeling after you leave tonight? Because after tonight, I won't see you, or I won't, we won't have another lecture session again until next Monday, which of course is after the exam. So, now is the time to ask if you do have anything. And if you don't, that's fine too. So I know there's been a lot of questions tonight, a lot of stuff I've already covered, and maybe I've already covered everything that you can think of, and that's fine too.
I'm satisfied.
Cool. Does anybody else have anything I could go over, help you out with?
Guess everybody's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I thought it might be a little bit of a short night. It really, like I said, if this is time you want to go back and study and take a break, that's fine too. There's nothing left. There's nothing new. There's no new material until next week. I checked earlier today, and nobody had taken the test just yet. So there could be people taking the test right now, and that's fine. But I try to, I know everybody's got a crazy schedule, and I'm not trying to lock everybody down and say you've got to take it on this particular date. That's just how I do it. I mean, I understand that, I've got a lot of colleagues that what they do, and I respect them. They try to lock down your computer. They try to record you. And I know that if somebody wants to cheat on this exam, I could have you guys go pay to do a proctor service, and you could still cheat. There's no way to stop it. So I just do kind of like the Boy Scout code. I trust that everybody that takes this test is you're doing it individually, and that you're not getting anybody helping you with it. I've always kind of done it that way. And so by doing that, I'm also giving you some flexibility, and you could take the test at 2 in the morning if that's your time. So I'm trying to be as flexible as possible. I feel like in this type of setting, there's got to be some flexibility built in. But I can also tell you, in any case, I know some professors that they claim they've got the best strategy in terms of how to lock down your test and record you, and people still, if they want to cheat, they could hook up multiple monitors to your screen and I wouldn't even know about it, and you could have somebody in the next room taking the test for you and they wouldn't even know. So I'm at
I
a
have a
point.
question.
Yeah, Tanisha.
So this test, you got to take it in like one day, or you can take it over a period of time from the 28th until October 4th. Like, so you can stop and start it, or what?
No. Once you start, you got to take it in one sitting. Yeah, you can't. There's no save later option.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Very good. So let's say you wanted to take the test tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? So if you start at 10, let's say it's 10:30 and you want to take a break and finish it on Wednesday, you can't do that. Once you start, you got to take it in one sitting. And once you start, you've got 2 hours to take it. You got 2 hours to take it. Which, by the way,
2 hours and it's 50 questions.
it's a 40 multiple choice and 2 problems. So each multiple choice is 2 points each. So that's 80 points. And then each problem is worth 10 points each. So that's 20. So there's your 100-point total.
Okay.
And when you take the test, I believe the point total should be labeled on each problem. But just the fact that I just told you that, I think it's important that when you're taking an exam, I think you need to know how the points are weighted, because if you know that every question essentially is weighted the same, you don't want to spend 20 minutes on one question. If you come to a question, you can't figure it out in a couple minutes.
Yes.
Take a good guess and move on to the next question, because what happens is you could end up not finishing the exam and then get a bad score. So you got to kind of do some strategy, some planning here before you take the test too. So that's why I think it's fair to tell you what each question is valued. And so you could literally do this, and not that I would suggest anybody do this, but you could literally take the 40 multiple choice questions that are worth 2 points each, get them all correct, and then stop. You get a B on the test, because literally that's 80 out of 100 right there. Now, I wouldn't suggest anybody do that, but I'm just saying you should know how it's weighted, because that'll help you plan in terms of how much time you want to spend. I probably personally wouldn't spend more than a minute or so on each of the multiple choice. I would maybe allocate, I don't know, 45 to 50 minutes on the multiple choice questions, and then the rest of the time on the 2 problems. And you should still, that should be plenty of time to get this test in. Anything else from anybody? Anything? All right. If you're feeling pretty good and you need to leave, I know it's almost 9 o'clock. That's fine. I can hang on here, as long as you need. I know we technically have almost another hour if you need it. But I know it's been a long day for a lot of people. It's Monday. But I'll give you some more time, a few more minutes to ask, think of anything to ask, and then if there's nothing, that's fine. We'll wrap it up here in a few minutes. But if you need to leave, that's great. And then just email me this week if something comes up and you have a question about anything. I think most, at this point, I try to get back to your emails as fast as possible. I apologize if I don't get back to them. Sometimes if I feel bad, sometimes if I get an email late Friday, sometimes, on Saturdays with my kids, sometimes I don't see it right away. And I think I had one situation where I didn't actually get to the email until Sunday, and that's not my intent. I just didn't see it. But I hope most of you see that I'm pretty responsive to emails, and I try to get back to you pretty quickly. So, and knowing that there's an exam this week, I'm watching them constantly to make sure that if there's a test question before you begin, I try to get back to that. I try to give some priority to that type of question. So.
Okay, I'm out. Thank you.
Thanks, you, Daniel. Have a good one.
All right.
See you later.
All right, see ya. Have a good night.
Hmm.
Philip, did you have a question?
Well, so these are the types of these are the types of questions going to be on the quiz on the exam, I guess.
Yes. So if you go over the, if you go over, let me go back. These practice type of questions, the answer is yes. These come right from the test bank, the same place that I got the actual exam questions. You bet, it's the same type of question.
Okay.
So if you practice these, this is really kind of like a tune-up before you take the real exam.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Did you have anything else? Are you good?
I'm good.
Cool. Tanisha, you still on there? We've got 2 left in. Philip, Tanisha, can you hear me? Or do you need anything else before I'll sign up? But if you need anything, I can hang on here to help.
No, I think she's muted, so.
No, but she should be able to hear me.
Right.
And since technically I got a little bit more time, I can hang on here. But Tanisha, can you hear me or not? I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute if I don't hear anything. I'll give you a few minutes in case you're having a technical issue. I'm checking my chats to make sure that nobody sent me anything that they can't get into the internet or something. All right, well, I'm going to wrap this up. Since nobody else is, Philip, you're good. Tanisha, I don't know if you can hear me or not. I try to see if you're still there. So if you're having an internet issue, I apologize, but I'll wrap this up. But I'll oh, there you are. Yeah, are we okay? Did you have anything you want me to help with, or you think?
I guess so. I just gotta practice a little more. Quit making noise with that plastic bag. What's your type, Professor?
I'm sorry. Are you okay for tonight? I was just kind of wrapping things up to see if there's anything else I can help anybody with. Go over any concept, anything that I haven't covered yet.
Oops.
Philip says he's good.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm just gonna have to study real good on my own, and I have been using a tutor and stuff or whatever. She's been real helpful, and I'm just gonna have to study a bit more. But I'm starting to understand the concept.
And Tanisha, I would definitely try those practice test questions and connect as well. Diane,
Okay. Did you get my email where it had said I had got a 60%? Like on first try, I had got a 30%.
I got
then
that.
On my second try.
If you check your Blackboard gradebook, it should show it should show your best score. I think the one. So double check that, because I looked earlier and it showed the correct. It showed your highest quiz score. I think the one that you showed me, I think in Connect, I think they just averaged it. But
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but your best score is what should show up in Blackboard. So always, check the Blackboard site and make sure that high score is on there. If not, let me know. But I think I looked earlier and it did show the high score in Blackboard.
Right. So you said with the smart book video, you said that's just optional, but do they help your grade in any type of way?
No, it's just, well, hopefully it'll help your understanding. It might help your test score, but because of the time it takes to go through all that extra stuff, some students need it. So that's just an optional resource I put out there.
Okay. Can you show me again how to get to the practice exam? My internet's been going in and out.
No problem. Here, hold on. All right, so you have to go right into Connect. And what I'll do, hold on. All right. So in the student view, so when you log in, you'll find it at the very bottom of all your assignments. It should show up after the Chapter 13 quiz. Okay. You should see where it'll say Exam 1 Practice for both of them. And Diane, if you try to get in tonight or tomorrow and you still can't see, just let me know.
Okay.
It's just log in to Connect, like and you have to log in directly to Connect. Do not log in through Blackboard. Okay.
Okay.
And you should see them. And if you don't, let me know.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on anything else that I have covered? I'm not rushing anybody. I got time.
Is chapter 4 homework due this Sunday, the 4th?
Good question. Let me check. What happened is when I pushed the exam back, everything should have updated, but I may need to go in there and reset. Cindy, thank you for, yeah, no, it's not. I will go in and I'll reset that. Yeah, I'm glad I'll do that tonight. So the answer.
So the homework and the quiz is being pushed back a week.
Yes. Good, very good question. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I'm going to reset that tonight. So I'm glad you brought that up. Very good. So after we log out here, I will reset those due dates. But all you guys have to worry about up through Sunday is the exam one.
Okay.
All right. So anything else that I can help anybody with on anything else tonight?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good.
Philip's good. Diane, Cindy?
Yep, I'm good.
Cool. All right. So I will reset those due dates. Thank you for reminding me. And then just stay, something comes up, email me and I will be back. I'll try to respond to anything as quick as I can. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right, guys. Have a good one. All right.